A home. It's something we all need. But for too many, having a safe place to make a home is out of reach. The challenges can seem insurmountable. And yet, each and every day, people are coming together to provide safe, quality, and affordable housing for those in need. Welcome to Let's Talk Housing. I'm your host, Sara Goldvine. Join us as we listen to and learn from people in British Columbia who are creating strong, inclusive communities where everyone can thrive.
Vancouver's Chinatown has been home to newcomers for generations, including many immigrants from China and Hong Kong who were not welcomed in other neighborhoods. Increasingly, though, residents there are losing their homes. In 2021, one building that was home to seniors was sold, leading families and residents to take action to save their homes. The nonprofit S.U.C.C.E.S.S stepped in to purchase and run the building with funding through BC Housing. Today on Let's Talk Housing, we hear from Tim Lam, whose grandfather lived at Grace Seniors Housing, and from Queenie Choo, CEO of S.U.C.C.E.S.S. Before we get underway, I want to acknowledge that this recording is taking place on the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh, who have stewarded these lands, including the area now known as Chinatown, since time immemorial. Also, in full transparency, this episode is being recorded in November of 2023. Tim, Queenie, welcome to Let's Talk Housing.
Thank you for having me, Sara.
Thanks, Sara. So happy to be here.
Tim, I'd like just to start by really focusing on the people here. Can you tell us a little bit about your grandfather? Of course, you're on this episode to speak for him because we're doing this in English. But can you tell us just a little bit about your grandfather and what type of life did he live, and what role did community play in his life?
Yeah, I'd love to speak to that. My grandpa, he lived a hard life. I recently was really thankful to have the experience to put together his eulogy, and I spoke with a lot of family members and got to piece together his life story in many ways, which I was really grateful to be able to do. He was someone who had a hard life, but also could be very giving and generous. When he had very little, he helped a classmate back in Hong Kong pay for his tuition when he couldn't pay for it himself. And this is something his classmate has told my family is something he remembered 50 years later, and something that was so important to him. So I was really reminded, like going through his eulogy of his story of resilience. He persevered through a lot, and I'm so thankful for the way that he brought his family over and he helped support his family over from Hong Kong. Even when times were really tough, was still able to find ways to give back and ways to still stay really connected with his community. I'm glad you brought that part up. The community was really, really important to him. When I would walk down the streets in Chinatown with him, even as a child, I always remember people calling out to him. Like, he would know all the store owners. I was always shocked. And then they would always tell me, oh, your grandpa taught us Tai Chi back, 20 years ago. So it was so remarkable that he held such strong roots for this long. And it made me think that this is something that I would want in my life.
Now, some folks that listen to this podcast might never have been to Chinatown in Vancouver. What's special about that community for people like your grandfather or and for your family? What makes it so special?
For my grandfather, it was a little piece of home back from Hong Kong for him, but of course it became its own standalone community here. It was a place that he could seek support when he felt alone, especially when he was first came here as a newcomer. Later on, it was a place that he could speak the same language, which sounds so obvious, but something we take for granted. Especially as English speakers. It was a place that he could feel at home because he could speak Cantonese. He knew folks there. He would meet up with his friend, would go up for dim sum.
Take us back to when your family learned that the building must be sold. How did that land for your grandfather and for your family?
I remember it quite vividly because it happened to come on his 90th birthday, of all days. And it arrived via a letter where we found out that he was essentially being evicted from his home. And I think at the time was given maybe 2 months to leave. This is back in 2021, where it was the peak of the pandemic as well. So a lot of anxiety. He would call us constantly. That's often how his anxiety would show up. But call particularly my mom, his daughter, for reassurance, for understanding what happened, confusion. He talked about not being able to sleep, so much so that he was so tired. He said he tripped and fell in the washroom very early in the morning. It was a really, really anxiety-inducing time, particularly for him. And then as we would learn, as we organize some of the other seniors and families for pretty much all the seniors in the home.
Queenie, I'd like to bring you in here, of course. When this happened, Success with funding through BC Housing stepped in and purchased the building so that residents could stay in their homes. And certainly for people that know housing, they know that taking on a new building on a really short timeline is quite a big endeavor. Why did Success feel it was so important to step in and take over this building?
So I always have a passion for seniors, especially those people who are having challenges with language and culture. These are the folks. If we don't have those opportunities for them, they would have been left out. And those are the people who are unspoken ones that I felt so strongly they should be included in our community. So when I heard the news, I just felt this is such an injustice. How can we leave those seniors in such a bind, and yet without a home to stay where they've been staying in that community for a long time? I was very angry, very frustrated, and I also very emotional about the whole situation when someone could actually sell the property without consulting those people living in there. So when the opportunity came by, that we certainly just jumped right into it. I remember I was helping out with the immunization for COVID-19 vaccine actually during the weekend because I'm a nurse. I wanted to help out the community as well. So I was continuing supporting the vaccination, but I got a call and said, what about this opportunity that, Success can take over? And I said, I don't have the money. It just came out from my mouth. But we love to care for those individuals at the home.
I love that you mentioned the importance of focusing on seniors. And of course, that's something that Success does a lot of, right? So why is it so important for Success to be able to provide housing and services specifically with that cultural perspective and specifically for residents who are speaking Cantonese?
Well, we believe in creating that inclusive community. No one should be left behind. For people who have the challenge of culture and language, should not be singled out. It applies to anyone, the First Nation, Ukrainian or Syrian refugees or others. We should be taking a look at, how we can support them and creating that inclusive community where they are going to thrive in their Canadian journey. So Success certainly want to empower that opportunity for the people who can make a difference to those folks who are vulnerable, such as the seniors at the former Grace Manor. So those are the unspoken ones. They require the basic amenities like housing and the opportunity to communicate in the language they understand, to eat the food that they are familiar with, and also enjoy the quality of activities being held at the home that they can identify with. What an opportunity that we could do that for them. And we could do it for anyone else if that's the matter. And especially for those people who lived at the former Grace Manor, that's very important. and also success will operate a whole host of seniors services such as long-term care, as well as assisted living and adult day programs. They are all culturally appropriate so that people can continue to enjoy the time that they have in a quality manner.
So Tim, your grandfather went through that change, right? And success came in and the building was upgraded. I know that there had to be repairs made. And then also Success's services were brought in as well. What difference did that make for your grandfather and for other people in the home to be able to have the increased services and through that proper culturally informed lens?
While he was there, and especially for like the other families that I knew that was there at the home, both before and after, the culturally inclusive services were everything to them. Like I said, it always goes back to making them feel like they were at home, being able to have access to the same traditions that they grew up in, same access to the food, the language. And particularly when this was at its height, I remember what I would always say is like, just imagine how you would like to age in place. Imagine if you were in this scenario where you were 90 years old. Would you want to be able to move to somewhere that you can speak the same language, where you can still practice the same traditions and even games and socialize with people in the same way that you grew up with, in the same way that you connect with, that makes you feel like home? And of course you would say yes. And the reverse is true as well, right? Would you want to be transplanted at 90 years old to a place that you can't speak the language, particularly at that age, let alone at any age? I feel like that would be very cruel.
Yeah, it would be. And of course, I mean, I think you've really honed in on is that housing is about so much more than four walls and a roof, right? Particularly for seniors, particularly if they're spending more time in that home, if the space where they're living is where they're also connecting with friends and services. Queenie, what types of challenges do non-English speaking seniors face in accessing housing that can meet their needs? We know it's such a challenge for everybody, but what makes it increasingly challenging are those additional barriers that seniors who are non-English speakers face?
Actually, the challenges are quite significant, especially newcomers. When they come to Canada, there's a lot of, processes like getting a reference and, putting down a deposit, getting affordable housing, how to apply for it, and also, looking and viewing the opportunity in the apartment or what's available. All those could be very foreign to people not from Canada. So on top, if people don't have the language skill, it would be even very hard to understand. And that's why we wanted to make sure for those people who come from other countries, they also being oriented about what's happening in Canada, especially looking for housing. Because there's a lot of scam going on. And definitely we want to be able to help those newcomers who are non-English speaking as well, be able to understand, what are the process, what are being expected of them. Before you go for a deposit, making sure is a very legitimate and credible, landlord, and get reference check on those and before they go for it. Because we heard so much about people got scammed about, getting affordable housing or housing for that matter. So because of some language, maybe the communication issue, the language issue, etc. So it makes it extraordinarily hard for people who are non-English speaking.
There certainly are, so many risks that people can get exposed to in such a tight housing market. Queenie, I'd love to get your thoughts as well on the importance of providing culturally specific housing when it comes to addressing racism, because we see the impacts of racism and, of course, including anti-Asian racism in homelessness and housing insecurity numbers. What do you think is the impact of being able to provide housing like this in also then addressing these broader systemic barriers like racism?
Thanks, Sarah, for the question. The first part, I would say, is critically important. As Tim mentioned, creating the environment where people can identify, and also can enjoy for many, many reasons, food, language, even, activities, festivities, and so that they can identify with and enjoy, mostly. And also, I think that it's important to look at the opportunity for them, not just housing them, but also creating that environment. They also can have a sense of belonging. That's vitally important. The mental health support, the spiritual support are equally important than the physical support. So I think that in order to age healthy and age well in place, those holistic approach to health should not be missed. My response to your first question. And the second part about anti-Asian racism or racism as a whole, definitely there shouldn't be any bigotry, discrimination, and racism in our community. And that shouldn't be separating us apart. As you know, Canada is such a diverse country. We have invited so many immigrants or newcomers. Now could be in second, third, fourth, and more generations Canadians. We are all Canadians, but no less. So it is important to look at the integration, diversity, and equity among us, rather than destroying a community because we look different, we speak different, and also we have different culture. I think that on the other side, I think that we should be able to value those people who bring in a diverse background so that we can create that excellent opportunity to integrate those people with a diverse culture, creating that wonderful fabric of Canada. And that's what we are. So, for that front, I definitely would want to stop, racism in our community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's part of the magic that makes this such a wonderful, wonderful place to be, have the honor of living. Tim, we've got time for just probably another question or two. And ultimately, I mean, this was as you mentioned, it was a really scary time for residents and for their families. Ultimately, though, you and other families and residents were successful in saving the building. Now that you've got hindsight, what recommendations would you have, or maybe you've got some specific recommendations for families or residents who might be worried about the security of the housing for their loved ones?
I'll share, I think, where my head's at. I could probably give some advice on advocacy a little bit on how to get it public attention, but I don't think would probably be necessarily that helpful. I think what I might share more in a general sense, if something were like this to happen again, is more that I think I'm looking for the government and BC Housing and the institutions at B to have better due diligence when to avoid situations like this. It's hard for me to give advice because I hope no other family has to go through a similar situation where their seniors or grandparents or people in their life are being evicted. But of course, we know that it happens. I think what I would speak to is that it felt like my grandfather, as well as I think it was around 80 other seniors in Grace Seniors Home, fell through the cracks and fell through a lot of, I don't know what you might call it, almost bureaucratic loopholes. It felt like there should have been something like a safety net to catch them somewhere along the way. And I know that was a concern shared by a lot of the families we were organizing, and a surprise by a lot of the families, that there was no safety net, or there was no way to say, hey, maybe the sale, like we shouldn't allow the sale to go forward, because there was no meaningful or material plan to properly find housing for these seniors. Even speaking from the past, like I'm remembering at the time it was so scary. Like the private developer, like he put up ads in the Chinese newspaper asking for a warehouse space to house a bunch of seniors, which was connected back to my grandfather and the rest of this community. I would hope whoever the governing bodies in charge, particularly if it was involving BC Housing, for there to be better due diligence in place, knowing that like this does, even though there was no malice, of course, this kind of negligence can cause very much material harm and trauma to these seniors.
Yeah, thank you for that. And Tim, there's now, there's a lot of seniors, who continue to live in Chinatown, including at the former Grace Manor. What are your hopes for them, knowing what you know about what was so important for your grandfather? What hopes do you have for those seniors?
I really hope that those seniors can age in place with dignity. I hope that in these kind of like golden years of their life, that they're really just able to enjoy, celebrate, be themselves, be surrounded by a community, be with their family. I really hope that for all of Chinatown, really, like I'd love to see even more culturally inclusive housing being built, and more culturally inclusive senior housing, not just being built, but also being secured into perpetuity. And if I dream even bigger, if I look like decades into the future, like perhaps this is a place I could age in place with dignity, right? And I would love to see Chinatown become that kind of place, because I'm reminded of how much our seniors are really the heart of Chinatown. They're very much the ones who hold the stories, the traditions, the histories of the neighborhood. I won't get into the whole political aspect of it, but there is a fear at the heart of it, a fear of losing what makes Chinatown special. And if I had to point to like what really does make it special, it often comes down to the seniors in the neighborhood who keep that community thriving.
Thank you, Queenie. Let's end it with you. I mean, you've of course through success provide lots of services in the neighborhood. What are your hopes for Chinatown if you look out into the future?
I look for, hopefully that will be more vibrant, and certainly the revitalization of Chinatown needs to continue to prevail. And I hope whether it is Chinese-speaking seniors and other seniors, it could be an inclusive community where people thrive and enjoy the community. And I think definitely the move to take over the former Grace Manor definitely is an opportunity to set the example for the future. So I wanted to kudos, the consideration from BC Housing to have success, to be able to help those seniors who otherwise would be in such a terrible and vulnerable situation. So I would hope, again, there would be more opportunity to build our community, to be more inclusive and more culturally inclined.
That's a wonderful vision for the neighborhood and for all communities. Queenie, Tim, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. Let's talk again soon.
To learn more about BC Housing, including how to apply for subsidized housing in British Columbia, visit bchousing.org. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and X. If you enjoyed this episode, give us a rating. This will help others find Let's Talk Housing and join the conversation. You can subscribe to Let's Talk Housing on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.